"Stop the tractor!" His scream ripped through the air as the engine roared louder. The massive tractor didn't slow down. Its steel blades tore through the soil, crushing rows of crops that had taken him years to build. Wooden fences snapped and collapsed like they were nothing. Dust filled the air as his farm was destroyed in front of his eyes. He ran toward it, waving his arms desperately. "This is my land. You can't do this." He fell to his knees in the dirt, hands shaking, begging the driver to stop. Nearby, HOA officials stood cold and silent, clipboards in hand, watching as if this was routine. Neighbors gathered, phones raised, recording his humiliation. Without warning. Without mercy. In that moment, it wasn't just his farm being destroyed. It was his dignity. If you've ever watched an HOA abuse its power and felt helpless, comment enough. And if you believe no one should lose their land without a warning, stay with this story, because what happened next shocked everyone. Before the tractors, before the shouting, this land was quiet. Every morning, he walked the rows of his farm just after sunrise, boots damp with dew, hands brushing over crops he had planted himself. This farm wasn't inherited wealth or a lucky break, it was built year by year, season by season, with patience and sweat. When people told him a black man couldn't make it on his own land anymore, he answered by working harder. The farm sat just outside a growing residential community. At first, the neighbors barely noticed him. He kept to himself, fixed his fences, tended his soil, and sold produce locally. He followed county rules, paid his taxes, and stayed out of trouble. There were no complaints. No conflicts. Just work. Then the neighborhood changed. New houses went up. Roads widened. Property values became a daily conversation. And with them came the Homeowners Association, meetings, bylaws, and people who believed authority mattered more than fairness. At first, the HOA ignored him. Then they started watching. A slow drive past his gate. Photos taken from the road. Long looks that felt less like curiosity and more like judgment. Still, he stayed calm. He believed that if you followed the law would protect you. This land was legally his. His farm was approved. He had nothing to hide. He didn't know yet that for some people, the problem was never the farm. It was who owned it. The first notice arrived quietly. No knock. No conversation. Just a white envelope wedged into his mailbox, stamped with the HOA logo like a seal of authority. He opened it standing by the fence, expecting nothing more than community updates or meeting reminders. Instead, the words felt cold. Unauthorized land use has been observed on your property. Please review HOA bylaws and take corrective action immediately. He read it twice. Then a third time. Unauthorized? That night, he spread documents across his kitchen table, land deeds, zoning approvals, agricultural permits. Everything was legal. Everything was approved years ago. The farm existed long before the HOA ever did. The next morning, he responded calmly. Polite email. Attached documents. Clear explanations. No anger. No accusations. Days passed. No reply. Then the second notice came. This one wasn't polite. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action, including fines and remediation at owner's expense. Remediation. The word sat heavy in his chest. He attended the next HOA meeting, sitting quietly at the back while others complained about lawns, fences, paint colors. When his turn came, he stood, spoke clearly, and presented his paperwork. The room went silent. The HOA president barely glanced at the documents. "We'll review this," she said flatly. That was it. No discussion. No acknowledgement. No respect. As he walked out, he overheard a whisper he wasn't meant to hear. "This isn't the kind of neighborhood we envisioned." That's when he realized something had shifted. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about control. After the second notice, the pressure didn't slow down. It multiplied. Fines appeared without explanation. First 4 non-compliant structures. Then 4 visual disruption. Each letter arrived with tighter deadlines and higher penalties, written in language designed to intimidate rather than inform. He called the HOA office. No answer. He emailed again. No response. Instead, unmarked cars began stopping near his property. Men with clipboards stepped out, snapping photos from different angles: the barn, the fencing, the equipment. When he walked toward them to ask questions, they drove away without a word. Neighbors who once waved now avoided eye contact. One afternoon, a woman from the HOA approached him at the edge of his land. She didn't greet him. Didn't introduce herself. She simply pointed toward the field. "That all needs to go," she said. "Based on what?" he asked calmly. She shrugged. "HOA standards." "This farm was here before the HOA," he replied. "You don't have jurisdiction over." She cut him off. "We'll decide that." That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because he was afraid, but because something felt deeply wrong. The rules kept changing. The explanations kept disappearing. And every interaction carried the same unspoken message. "You don't belong here." He consulted a local clerk. Then a zoning officer. Both confirmed the same thing: his farm was legal. Fully permitted. Protected under county agricultural use. Relief washed over him. Surely this would end now. He sent one final email to the HOA, attaching official confirmations, highlighting statutes, calmly requesting they cease harassment. The reply came within minutes. Not an apology. Not a clarification. Just one sentence. "Enforcement will proceed as scheduled." No date. No details. No warning. That's when he understood the truth. They weren't confused. They weren't mistaken. They had already decided. The morning was bright, deceptively calm. Heavy machinery rumbled down the gravel path: tractors, bulldozers, and trucks filled with workers. Behind them, the HOA officials walked like generals inspecting a conquered land. No warning. No final notice. Just a single line: proceed. He ran toward them, heart pounding. "Stop. Please, this is my farm," he shouted, waving papers frantically. The driver didn't even glance up. The massive tires crushed young corn stalks as though they were paper. Wooden fences splintered under the weight of the machines. Neighbors began to gather, some filming, some whispering, some staring in disbelief. The HOA president, clipboard in hand, stood cold and silent, watching the scene unfold. He fell to his knees in the dirt, hands gripping the muddy soil. "This land isn't yours. It's mine." A worker laughed. A phone flashed. A drone hovered above. The tractors didn't stop. The humiliation was public. His sweat, his work, his pride, all being obliterated for the world to witness. He realized, in that terrifying moment, that this wasn't just an attack on his farm, it was a statement: "You don't belong here." As the machines roared on, he caught sight of his neighbors. Silent, unsure, some even smirking. No one would help. No one would intervene. His chest tightened, a mix of anger and despair. But deep inside, a spark ignited, a silent determination that he would fight back, no matter what it took. As the dust settled and the machines finally roared away, the farm lay in ruins. Broken fences, flattened crops, and gouged earth stretched as far as the eye could see. He sat on the muddy ground, knees drawn up, staring at what had been the heart of his life. Neighbors whispered to each other, but no one approached. Phones continued recording, capturing every angle of his defeat. The HOA officials left without a glance, satisfied that their power had been displayed. For hours, he remained silent. Not out of surrender, but to collect himself. The weight of the day pressed down like the heavy machinery that had just left. The humiliation was real, the world seemed indifferent, and even the law appeared distant. Alone in the wreckage of his life's work, he reflected on everything: the sweat, the years, the pride, and the injustice. The world had watched him broken, but he knew something deep inside: he wasn't done. This silence wasn't defeat. It was preparation. The calm before the storm. Every observer thought it was over. The farm was gone, the man beaten, the story finished. But the truth, hidden in his quiet determination, was about to turn the tide. Days after the destruction, he sifted through his files again, documents scattered across the kitchen table. Every permit, deed, and county approval lay in neat piles, a lifetime of proof that his land was not only legal but protected. The HOA had assumed that authority alone would be enough. They thought rules were on their side. They were wrong. Among his papers, he found the federal agricultural registration for his property, dated years before the HOA even existed. The law was clear: any forced destruction of this land without due notice was illegal. The HOA's power, so confidently displayed, was now fragile, paper-thin against federal authority. He also discovered emails he had archived, communications from local officials and zoning boards confirming that his farm was compliant. Photographs, legal notices, and maps all formed a fortress of evidence. And there was one final piece, a video recording he had made months earlier, showing the land in full compliance, the boundaries, and the crops, time-stamped and ready. For the first time since the tractor tore through his field, he felt a flicker of hope. Not just hope, power. This wasn't just about stopping the HOA anymore. This was about proving that no one, no matter how arrogant, could take what was rightfully his. He picked up his phone and began calling authorities. The sheriff, local media, legal counsel. Each call layered another barrier against the HOA's unlawful actions. The game had changed. The hunter was about to become the hunted. A week later, the farm became the stage for something no one in the HOA had expected. Authorities arrived, not quietly, but with purpose. Sheriff vehicles lined the edge of the property, their lights reflecting off the muddy remains of the once thriving farm. Cameras from local news crews clicked and whirred as reporters set up in the perimeter, eager to capture the showdown. The HOA president, once so confident, now stood frozen, clipboard in hand, watching the very ground she thought she had conquered. Workers who had demolished the farm before hesitated, uncertain, as legal officials began documenting their actions. The man walked onto his property, papers in hand, calm but commanding. He presented the federal agricultural registration, county permits, photographs, and time-stamped videos. Each document told a story the HOA couldn't dispute. "You destroyed my farm," he said, voice steady but loud enough for the cameras to catch every word. "You did this without warning, without legal authority, and without regard for the law. Today, that ends." The HOA tried to protest. They muttered about rules, bylaws, aesthetics. But the sheriff cut them off. Orders were read aloud. Penalties were enforced. Workers were instructed to cease all demolition. Equipment was to be removed. The man's property, intact and protected, was reclaimed under federal law. Neighbors who had watched silently for months now whispered in shock. Some clapped. Some recorded on their phones, knowing this story would travel beyond their quiet neighborhood. The humiliation had shifted. The crowd now witnessed justice in action. The former aggressors were stunned. The power they had wielded so arrogantly crumbled. The man, who had once been kneeling in dirt, now stood upright, a symbol of endurance and rightful victory. For hours, the scene replayed across cameras, social media feeds, and local news. The message was clear: no matter how much power someone thinks they have, it cannot triumph over truth, preparation, and courage. The farm was restored. Fences rebuilt, crops replanted, and the earth slowly healing from the damage. The man walked through his fields once more, breathing in the familiar scent of soil and sweat. The community, now aware of the truth, looked at him with respect. The HOA faced penalties, legal scrutiny, and public condemnation. Their arrogance had been exposed, and for once, power had no place against justice. He knew this victory wasn't just about land, it was about dignity, perseverance, and standing up when the world tries to break you. His story became a message to others: no matter how overwhelming the force against you seems, preparation, patience, and truth can overturn injustice. He looked at the sun rising over his restored fields and whispered to himself, "Justice may take time, but it always finds its way." If you believe in standing up against injustice, hit like, subscribe, and share this story, because no one should ever lose what's rightfully theirs.